Welcome back. Today I have my old McGraw Edison 22, model 22 or 22 pint dehumidifier. That has a little problem. The switch went bad on the reservoir on the float level switch, so it wasn't turning off when the reservoir was full. So this is a pretty vintage guy. It was made back in 1978, all metal, before plastic, or BP as I say. But and these things tend to run a long time if you keep them clean, and it's not too difficult to clean them and blow the air out of the coils. Actually, just to blow the air out of the coil, this one, you just need to remove the two screws, take the front panel off, and you can take your air compressor and clean the air out. But let's take this apart, and I'll show you how to replace the switch that went bad. This particular, what happens in these switches, I'll mention this again and show you the you see how this hangs down. It's worn out. The where this switch sits in there, the tab, the plastic wears out from use, just going up and down, and so this hangs down too far. Should be up hanging here, right above where the switch is. But these are Cherry switches, obsolete, and I found some replacements on eBay. Some Cherry replacements, some obsolete ones, and so I bought a few of them, and you can cross-reference, so we'll talk about that a little later. If you have one of these old vintage units, there may still be some around. So let's take a look and let's open it up and show you how to replace that switch. So you can see this thing is built pretty sturdy, all metal. I call this a BF unit, or I mean a BP unit, excuse me, before plastic. But it's relatively easy to take apart. And as I was saying, the you have the where the water reservoir goes, and has that little piece of plastic styrofoam that just raises up and hits the micro switch. Well, what happens is years of inserting that reservoir and the switch wearing out. What happens to the switch is, if you notice, this is a replacement that I mentioned, and you see there's not very much play before the tab hits the red button on the switch. So what happens is this plastic in there, you know, that it just normal wear and tear, and this thing hangs down, and when it hangs down, it'll get caught on the reservoir when you put it back in. And actually, let's open this up and I'll show you how to replace that. It's very easy, and also a couple tips on how to keep your dehumidifier running. Now this particular one, like I said, it's all metal, and it comes apart pretty easy. Just have a number of screws. Pull the knob off, and you have a couple screws on the bottom here to take out. Take these two out, and this kind of hangs. It has two retainers there that kind of slide up in some grooves there. And one thing about these is if you keep them clean and clean them, some of these I know you can't open because the way they're all plastic and sometimes everything snaps together and they're rather difficult. But the next thing is to remove these 4 screws here. To get this panel out of the way, because it has the wiring attached to it in the sensor. And basically, these things work like a refrigerator. They have coils in them. They have a compressor, and I said this old guy from the late 70s. It's like an old refrigerator, man. They just keep on running as long as you keep them clean. So you've got to be careful with the sensor here and the wires. Just lay that in there like that. Then you have 6 screws on the sides. Pop them off, left and right. Then we can remove this whole cover on the case. Let's get this side. This will not take long. I know some of those new ones are very hard to open. When I worked at the hospital, I kind of made my little office area. I was an electrician, as I mentioned. I made my little office area in a old area where there used to be a old generator, and oh, I forgot a couple screws on the back. Yes. Well, there was an old generator that had been removed. And it was a small area, but I had one of those 10,000 BTU little portable air conditioners in there. And those things were all plastic, and actually I had it vented in the exhaust where that old generator used to sit. And one time I noticed it wasn't cooling as good. And they do have slide out fillers in those things, but to get down into the coil, oh man, those things are tough to get apart because everything snaps together. They're really not designed to come apart. So I suggest if you have one of those little portable room air conditioners on wheels, my suggestion is to somehow just attach the filter on the outside where the air goes into the coil. Whoop. So the old guy comes apart real easy, and you have to take the fan out on this one. So you have a couple mount on the top mount. This top mount will come off. Be careful again not to damage any of these refrigeration coils. And all you need to do is take one screw out of the motor to get at this switch. Just let that hang there. Careful not to damage anything. One thing about these, you need to keep these coils clean. Vacuum them. They do sell fine brushes to clean coils where you can clean them off if they're really dusty. If you get a blanket of air there, what that's going to do is lose efficiency, and it's going to overheat this compressor, and that's sometimes what causes compressors to go bad, because actually the freon coming back into the compressor helps cool the compressor. So down inside, I'll show you a picture here that where this switch sets in. Let's get down in close. Let me move the camera and we'll get in close down here. So you can see the micro switch down in here. Whoops. It sits right there. It is right there. And the tab hangs down below. That the piece of styrofoam on a reservoir, when it fills up, floats up and hits that switch. So let's pull that out. Get my camera back in the mic. So now that the switch is replaced, I actually didn't show you that because I figured to save some time in the video. But 2 screws, you pop out the holder and put it back in. You can hear the switch now working. The styrofoam on the reservoir just goes up and down. You slide that in, and as it fills, so it goes up, you can hear the switch clicking. And shuts the unit off. Now, if you wanted to on these, I'm sure you're aware that you could punch out that hole and put a hose and drain it down the drain, and if it's sitting in your basement. But in the area where I have this, there really is no drain in that room close by. So I use it as it is. And again, I stress on keeping these coils clean, because if the coil's not clean, what happens is the compressor can overheat. If there's not enough cooling flowing through the compressor from the freon, that actually keeps it cooler and helps cool that compressor. This coil really doesn't get that dirty. It just gets a film on it. You can wipe it off, even hose it off if you're careful not to get the electrical wet. These things, the new ones, I don't know how hard they are to get apart. The plastic ones, I know when I worked in engineering, I had 2 rooms where I had my office and the desk and all my electrical supplies. And in the back room, there used to be an old generator there, but there was no air conditioning, cooling in that room. So I had one of those portable 10,000 BTU on wheels, those portable air conditioners, and I had it vented out the stack where the old generator was. But they have the pull-out coils on the top, the filter where you pull it out, you can clean it. But on the side, on the intake for the other coil, you can't get to them. And I had a dickens of a time tearing that apart because everything snaps together, and cleaning that coil and finally getting it back together. So I don't know how these new plastic dehumidifiers are. But as you can see, the old switch, as I showed you, hanging down there, you see that plastic where that tab sits. This one's all bent up, but see, there's a lot of play there because that plastic gets worn. So that was what was hanging down and was getting jammed into the reservoir when I slid it in there. So you know, the old switch, and these switches are hard to find. You could look up and cross-reference a replacement. I just happened to find 4 of these Cherry switches on eBay cheap, and you need to type with the again, let me show you a new one over here. Here's the there's another one here. You need the long tab, most definitely. You need to get the type with the long tab, and you need about 10 grams of pressure on this. So you have to get one with the pressures right, because there's not too much weight with that styrofoam when it lifts up. So if you get a switch that takes more grams of pressure to move it, then it's not going to work right. It's not going to shut off. So here's the measurements of the original Cherry switch that goes in there. You just find something with the same measurements and the right size tabs, because there's two sizes of tabs. You can have the 1/4 inch or the smaller tab on there, or you could, if you get a 1/4 inch tab, you could also replace the ends if you wanted to. But you can look up, I'm sure you could find a cross reference if you couldn't find any of these switches. So this one is a Cherry E33-85HX is what this switch is marked, the old one. And I just happened to find them because they're obsolete. So other than that, if you have any comments, questions, here sitting over here to the side is, I was working on that old Philco radio. I restored the cabinet. I still have to get to this. This is the guts. It's I don't know what somebody did to here. I hope that transformer isn't damaged, but got to clean it up. I put a piece of cardboard over the speaker. Replace all those capacitors, fire it up, and see if I can get it aligned. And my friend Frank will have a nice radio then. So, other than that, God bless and have a good day.